good evening. It's that time again, and following on from our body armor discussion, we're going to have a look at this. This is the right front body piece from a set of Highmark police armor from the 1990s in the UK. Turn it over. This is the inner face, outer face, and label. So let's start with looking at the label. Highmark, they're the manufacturers. Here the officer would put their name, warrant number, so badge number, whatever, division, unit, sector, whatever that's going to be. So when they put their body armor down or take the panels out to be wiped down, remember, waterproof outer, they don't get lost. Style, HP 12 type 1. Size is 12. I can't tell you what the different sizes are, but this is about a medium to a large size. Anti-stab facing. Think back to our last video. If you haven't seen that, watch that one first to understand what anti-stab means, and you'll recognize this little thing. Ballistic insert, Mark 1, F509. So this body armor panel is telling us from this label that it has anti-stab protection and some ballistic protection. DOM, date of manufacturer, 0199. So this was made in January 1999. Serial number. So here there'll be a serial number for the actual panel itself, quality control reasons. Important, wear this side to body. You will see exactly why that's important. Do not machine wash or dry clean do not machine wash, dry clean, or do not machine wash, dry clean, or immerse in water. Okay, so remember what I said before in the last video. Body armor does not work very well when it's wet. And then a reference number 5894-1, which I'm not clear. So that's the armor itself. This is the outer face. The hawk-eyed amongst you will notice a variety of holes. I'll come into what these mean. Let's hold this up to the camera. Remember we talked about waterproof layer. This is looks like polyurethane coated nylon. So we have a rough outer, then the waterproof inner on the actual panel. So until some mean person puts holes in the panel, the actual ballistic and anti-stab inserts inside are kept waterproof. And that's important because there's water from outside, rain or splash, or I guess if you go in water itself. Also from the inside, it's important because the person wearing this is going to be sweating. So that's that for now. Let's move on to having a look at what else is going on. Okay, so as said, this is the right chest panel. So here we have the cutout for the right arm. The gap between the bottom of the right armpit and about the right side of the hip. Right hip line. This type actually zipped up the front, almost like a cardigan. So there's another panel that butts onto the front here. So this is, I guess, directly above where a person's belt buckle would be. Vertical line, chest to neck cutout, and this flap here bends slightly to go over the shoulder. So again, we have that sort of narrow over the shoulder distance. Dimension wise, remember this is size 12. We're just over 30 centimeters for the front of the chest. For the right side of the body, 24 centimeters. Arm to hip size, about 15. And then from the hip upwards, about 30 centimeters. The top of the shoulder panel, the panel inside is only about 55 millimeters again. Put this back here. Think back to the video we had on the last panels, and you recall they were shot with mainly 357 Magnum and 22 long rifle. This panel is exactly the same. Now, this panel was at a distance of about 10 meters when it was shot. You can see the sort of damage that has been made to it in places. We are going to cut this panel open and have a look inside in due course. But just beforehand, I want you to clear on the sheer number of times this was shot. I'm not sure if that's actually a bullet hole in there, but it does appear to be. It could well be the exit mark from a fragment, because we have a large hole in here and there's something hard in there. Something hard in here too. We'll come to what those may be later. Large diameter hole, another large diameter hole, another large diameter hole, an enormous diameter hole. Then we have some smaller ones. Again, that looks like a little fragment exit hole. Moving down here, more. I guess we could count these up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 substantial holes. There's another mark down here. Again, this certainly doesn't look like an entry hole. This looks like an exit from some kind of fragment or piece, just as this tear would be. This wasn't stabbed or anything, so that's what I expect that to be. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 substantial holes. There's something else there which I can feel. Again, it's hard to know until I cut this open quite what is in here to see, but again, that looks like an exit. So 15 on the outside. Okay, so it was hit 15 times from the outside. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 substantial penetrations of the panel on the inside, and some substantial lumps. It's hard to express just how big this lump here is directly on the other side of whatever that mark there is. So, feeling the panel, there's an awful lot of distortion going on. Think back to the last video and you remember how when something comes through, it tends to bunch up fabric. It creates that pyramid pattern inside. If I recall correctly, this exit mark here, this round that went right through here and has come out to this hole, was actually a 30 caliber rifle, so that shouldn't surprise anyone that actually penetrated. Although it is interesting that it has gone off its path. So one thing that's hard to tell looking at the panel is flexibility. Flexibility in armor is important. Remember, this is the outside. Let's see if that shows it well on video. Let's do it sideways. That's the vertical flexibility, not a fat lot. So imagine you are sat in a car wearing a panel like this between your shoulder and your waist height, and you try and lean forwards to get out. That's your limit of forwards flexibility on your trunk. In other words, you're going to be rather like some touche turtle stuck trying to get up. This piece here is very flexible because this bends around your arm. In horizontal flexibility terms, we have quite a lot. Hold this up to the camera best I can. So this is the part that wraps around the round part of the person's trunk. And you can should already be able to tell that it doesn't bend in the opposite direction. So quite why that might be, you might not understand, but when we have a look inside here, I'm sure will all become clear. Okay, so opening this up, as I said, this is in polyurethane coated nylon, and as a result, it is not stitched because they didn't need to. Let's see if we can see it here before we destroy this, and you can't tell forever. But it's actually fastened by means of a heat seal. If you can just make out this band here, it's just a bit wider than the body of this awl. So there's a heat press, comes down and presses the two ends together, and someone comes and roughly trims around the outside, so the panel is nice and waterproof. So to get in, we have no stitching to cut, so we're going to have to cut the actual PU weld to get access inside. So that's going to take some time. So let's get started. Okay, so now we've cut our way in, and we can start to sort of dissect our way through it. I'm going to start by peeling back the outer layer, and we can have a look inside. And look where that takes us to start with. What do we got? We have what appears to be a metal plate, some bullet marks. This just appears to be a foam cover for comfort. Again, a steel plate, maybe, something like that. Hey ho, look at this. What have we got at the bottom here? We have a big old fat bullet tangled up with a bit of Kevlar. Let's hold that up to the camera. Wow, you can definitely see that's hit something hard and that's smushed it off. There's a few other little bits inside here. What's this a fragment of? It's hard to even tell. It's broken up the round that's been coming in. Let's put that in our little collection to one side. Put the camera back and we're going to keep going. Okay, let's get this cover off. Oh, bloody hell. I haven't quite managed to cut through the the PU properly there. Okay, and there we go. Oh God, this stuff. You know what, I'm just going to leave that. I'll remove that off camera. Let's feast our eyes on this for a minute. This is the flexible shoulder piece, if we recall. And if we remember from the last video on armor, we're looking at multiple layers of ballistic cloth. In fact, this has been stitched to four layers of heavy duty, what appears to be just nylon cloth on the backing of this. So this is multiple layers of Kevlar fabric. So remember from the last video, this is not resin impregnated. It flexes very easily. It doesn't make that weird clicky noise or feel. So this is not stab proofed. This part is proofed for ballistics. And indeed we have some kind of object in here. Yeah, I can feel it right in there. So whatever that was, appears to have come from this penetration and traveled up somehow. I'm sure we'll get to that. Now we have another little fragment of something embedded in the foam on the surface there. Just another little random shard of copper or lead. All right, I'm going to remove this, then we're going to keep having a look in here. Okay, outside of the PU cover has been removed. So now what we have before us is a foam backing on the front, for comfort reasons, I suppose. This is stitched through in four corners to some kind of harder piece. See if this even lifts out. This does sort of, I'm sure this lifts off properly. It's still stitched up in the top corner here. Well, boy, this is interesting. So this shoulder piece is all actually part of this whole piece. Remember, in the early video we discussed, smaller sections are less effective than large sections. You can already see some of the impacts and how they've met the resistance of the fabric in the back. And this is well stitched. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers of circumferential stitching. We've got quilting in the center, the quilting being at 30 millimeter squares. And then down at the bottom here, which have penetrated this panel, which is where all the interest is really going to be, we have some more fragments. So these are fragments that have penetrated this outer plate, which we haven't even opened yet, but is really very thin. These are clearly 2.2 long rifle. So that's really interesting that this 357 has done less well through this thin plate and this material than these 2.2 long rifle have. There you go, the fragment. There's a little bit of tearing down there. I'm going to have to cut this stitching here so that we can remove this panel from this panel and examine both of them properly. So let's do that next. Okay, a little fight with this stitching here is over. I am not sure what that was stitched with, if that's stitched with Kevlar thread or nylon, but that sure was a bugger to cut. So that has freed up us to remove this outer plate. Remember what I said before, we have plenty of movement in this dimension, because this is the outer face. We have very little movement in this dimension, very little movement in this dimension, and a lot of movement in that dimension. And looking inside, there appear to be steel plates somehow fixed to a backing, and this would appear to be the backing here. And before, when I had said about the black nylon backing of this, I'm not sure that this isn't just, if this is plain nylon or not. But whatever the backing of this is, this was clearly backed with Kevlar, and then looking at what appears to be an adhesive that has stained through, has some plates glued on the other side of it. So we're going to enter that in a little bit. But now we can look inside. Now we have our large quilted piece. We have, in fact, the whole piece is just like up here. Still kind of stuck to this. Is backed onto this black woven nylon, and it's all very, very flexible. This is actually probably rather comfortable in itself. I cannot begin to count these layers properly. I will do that, and I will flash that up on screen, because this will take some time. Okay, so those are counted. There are 13 layers here, but just to go back, look at the weave on this outer layer. This is much tighter than this coarser weave on the inside. 13 layers before we get to this black fabric here, which again, I'm assuming to just be nylon, but might be a ballistic nylon. Then another finer weave of our yellow Kevlar. Then the same 4 layers of nylon backing. The bottom has just some stitched on cushioning onto the bottom, presumably because that will be digging into the operator. And that's it. So that is a very simple piece of ballistic jacket. but just to be clear, oh Christ, more junk. More fragments. So just to be clear, these are fragments that have actually come through here and are actually trapped between the back layer of this panel and this PU nylon piece. These are just like little fragments of 2.2 long rifle. Another one. You can actually count the exit marks, and you can almost see in the, get rid of that, you can almost see in the light from the camera some of the dents and distortions that have gone on. All told, this has been extremely effective. So we're going to put this one down, then we're going to have a look at our metal plate. Now this is the piece I'm actually excited about. We've already understood from a previous video how ballistic fabrics work. Now we're actually going to have a look at some other bits. Again, this is just a foam cover. I'll try and take that off without ripping it apart. Oh, look at that. What's that? No, that is clearly a 2.2 long rifle. It's all smushed up. So that's broken up on the metal plates and being trapped on the inside. Look, we got more fabrics. Oh, this is exciting. I'll even zoom in on that. That's actually partially melted and welded itself into just that foam. That again is another 2.2 long rifle. Let's zoom back out. Now things are really getting interesting. Now we're really learning, huh? Look at all these little plates. Bet you didn't know that. I certainly didn't. So remember, flexible. Sorry, there's still bits of bullet fabric. Fragments falling out of this. Flexible, not flexible. And it's not flexible this way because the plates are suddenly closed up and trying to press against each other. It's flexible this way because the plates are now opening up. Ditto, plates are opening up, there's space, plates are closed, no space. So this is where we have our glue that's soaked through this backing piece. It looks like more than one layer of this material, and these steel plates are all glued to it. That really is absolutely fascinating. So not only in the mechanics of penetration does the bullet have to crush its way through these steel plates. Look at this, this one's taken multiple hits. Nice dent. But because these are glued to this fabric, it's also got to expend energy in breaking up the adhesion between the plate and the fabric backing behind it. Well, that's from manufacturer, size 12, that'll be, remember our sizing. That was our big penetration there. And that's really very sharp. No wonder that made such a big dent. Remember when I said you could feel bumps and dents? Those turned out not to be trapped bullets, although there were a few. These were the plates that are pushed in, and this is one of the things that might count against using, what is our definition on that? Against using small plates in body armor. So this plate here, although it's stopped the round, because we can see the full dent, this has deformed 14 millimeters into the user. So obviously not all of those 14 millimeters are directly into the person. They would have that quilted fabric behind to cushion it, then whatever uniform underneath, plus their body tissue, fat, that kind of business. So they would definitely have survived that, although I'm trying to think where that would be. On me, that would be that would be right on the edge of a rib towards my center of my sternum. So I think you could reasonably expect some good broken ribs from that. But the result of using metal plates is this panel is not only very obviously going to be stab proof, but to deform it to penetrate is requiring an enormous amount of energy. And if you're particularly lucky and it hits towards the center of a plate, the whole plate has to effectively be delaminated. Whereas if you're unlucky and it hits between the little plates, it's actually not doing half as much work, particularly as, remember, this would be worn curved. So there you go. It's amazing. Okay, so a quick review on this plate here. We have 92 squares of, I've said steel, which are 25 millimeters each way. So there are 92 square plates. There are 6 half squares. Obviously these are being cut from whole pieces, and then they're being glued onto this backing. Remember, this is just one front panel. There's a second panel on the left side of the chest, and then a large back panel as well. And here's something interesting for you. This is a big magnet. What do you notice? Yeah, it's not magnetic. So I've said it's steel, but I guess unless we can make it rust or do some good analysis, and yet it's covered, I'm looking at it now, it's super shiny. It looks like it's got a varnished coating on it as well, plasticky coating. So yeah, there it is. We can see the plastic coating over the front of it there. So again, I'm sticking with this being steel for now, even though it's not magnetic. And now this is being cut open, I would expect to see some very light surface rust form on some parts of this, which won't bother me at all. So let's recap. This is a piece of body armor made available to the police in the United Kingdom in the 1990s and early 2000s. It's flexible in 2 dimensions, inflexible in 2 more dimensions. It's rated for both spikes and a ballistic rating. Like all good body armor, it's in a waterproof outer layer. We've dismissed the outer layer. It's then got a cushion layer. We then have the, no doubt, spike and the main panel made from 92 squares backed onto a ballistic fabric, and that's where the inflexibility comes from. Then behind that we have our 13 plus 6 layers of ballistic quilted fabric, and then the inner face. There's no padding between the inner layer and the inner face, which honestly is a little surprising. You'd think there might be a little bit of a comfort layer there as well, given the deformation that we discovered earlier. So I hope you have found that interesting as I put this together. This will just be taped back up. It's going to be used as a teaching piece later on. I hope you found that somewhat interesting, better than just blasting away at something on a range and not actually looking at what it's made of. The actual manufacture of this with these plates will become very relevant in some later videos where you will get to understand the background of this design. So I hope you found this interesting for now. That's it. Please leave any comments, like, subscribe, do all that business. If you do like this video and more like it, please do consider going to Patreon and subscribing. A small fee there would be very helpful and would allow more videos like this to be made in a prompter manner. Quite what I'm going to do with all this crap that's come out of the actual vest, I'm unclear, but that's it for now. Thank you very much. Good night.